Missing service members after a Navy aircraft goes down in the Pacific. Hello, everyone. I'm Dana PERINO, and this is the Daily Briefing. The plane crashing in the Philippine Sea, southeast of Okinawa, Japan. It was on its way to the USS Ronald Reagan. 11 people were on board. Crews have now rescued 8 of them. Lucas Tomlinson is live at the Pentagon. Any idea what caused the crash, Lucas?
Well, not yet, Dana. The crash happened more than 12 hours ago while flying hundreds of miles out to sea to the aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan from Japan. Early indications say an engine failure could have caused the crash. According to defense officials, U.S. Navy helicopters rescued 8 Navy sailors. Out of the 11, 3 remain missing. And the search effort continues, although hampered by darkness, as it's now 4 a.m. in Japan. The 8 recovered sailors are in good condition back on board the aircraft carrier. The Navy's C-2 Greyhound is a cargo plane that delivers passengers and supplies, including the mail, to aircraft carriers at sea. It first entered service in the late 60s and is scheduled to be replaced in the next few years. This crash occurred 575 miles southeast of Okinawa, Japan, in the Philippine Sea Wednesday afternoon local time. The Japanese military is also assisting in the search for the 3 missing American sailors. Now, this crash comes 2 days after an Air Force training jet crashed, killing 1 pilot and injuring another in Texas. U.S. military plane crashes are up 38% this year compared to this point a year ago. And earlier this month, the head of Naval Aviation told Congress only half of the Navy's 542 F-18 Super Hornets can fly right now, another indication of the crisis facing the Navy. Dana?
I'm going to have Michael Waltz later on in the show, and he's going to talk a little bit about what I'm curious also about. This is obviously a terrible situation that happened today, but there have been a host of deadly accidents for the Navy in the Pacific. What can you tell us about that?
There have, Dana. There's been a whole series of deadly collisions in the Pacific, going back to January when a U.S. warship ran aground in Tokyo Bay, spilling more than 1,000 gallons of oil into the water. Months later, another U.S. warship, a cruiser, collided with a South Korean fishing vessel. And of course, over the summer, beginning in June, there were 2 deadly collisions involving the destroyers USS Fitzgerald and USS John S. McCain, killing 17 sailors in those 2 collisions, which the Navy called preventable. And over the weekend, there was another mishap for the Japan-based 7th Fleet. A U.S. destroyer collided with a Japanese tugboat. After that, tugboat lost propulsion. Thankfully, no one was injured, and there were minor damage to both ships. Dana?
I appreciate the report. Thank you, Lucas. Check in with you next week. So, a Fox News alert. Roy Moore's communications director, John Rogers, has resigned, according to a report in the Washingtonian. This comes just a day after Moore got a boost from President Trump, Moore insisting that he did nothing wrong as his campaign takes aim at 2 of his accusers. Jonathan Seri is live in Birmingham, Alabama. Jonathan.
Hi, Dana. Yeah, Fox News reached out to the Moore campaign, which has yet to confirm or deny this report in the Washingtonian that communications director John Rogers has resigned from the Moore campaign. Meanwhile, the campaign says that it continues to gather witness testimony and other evidence debunking the claims of his accusers, including Lee Korfman, who alleges that Moore inappropriately touched her when she was 14 years old, and Beverly Nelson, who claims that Moore assaulted her in his car shortly after she turned 16.
I don't know them. I've never known them. I've never met them to my knowledge. I later found out that Beverly Nelson had a case in front of my court in 1999, but I don't know them. I've never spoken to them, and certainly I didn't do anything to them.
Moore has been denying all allegations of sexual impropriety in interviews with sympathetic political commentators. He did not attend a public candidates forum in Huntsville, which his opponent used to mock him.
Who do you want to represent you in the United States Senate? Who do you want in January when the national news media turns on and they're interviewing the junior senator from Alabama? Well, who is it you want, and what do you want them to say? And what do you think that they will say, or are you going to be afraid of what they're going to say? Take a good look at those issues.
Jones spoke with reporters about President Trump's comments, calling him a liberal and soft on crime. Jones says he's letting his record speak for itself and won't let anyone, including the president, try to label it. Emory political science professor Andra Gillespie says the president's comments may have a lot to do with protecting his agenda on Capitol Hill.
The Trump administration appears to be trying to thread the needle. They're, in a really precarious situation. You've got Republicans who have a razor-thin majority in the Senate. If Roy Moore loses the seat, then that only makes the margin even more narrow, which is going to make it easier for legislation to stalemate.
So going into the holiday weekend and beyond, Moore is going to have to continue trying to dispel these allegations surrounding him. Meanwhile, Jones needs to reach out to moderate Republicans and convince them to vote across the aisle and perhaps do a little bit of praying that social conservatives who say they could never vote for a Democrat stay home on Election Day. Dana?
All right, Jonathan, thanks so much for your reports this week. Back here in President Trump's hometown, rival tabloids with similar headlines after the president urged Alabama voters not to choose Roy Moore's liberal opponent. For more on all of this, Jessica Tarlov is Senior Director of Research at Bustle.com, a Democratic strategist and a Fox News contributor. Jason Johnson is a Republican strategist and former chief strategist for the Ted Cruz campaign. So glad to have you here today.
Thanks a lot,
I
Dana.
never thought that this issue would actually become partisan, but in a way it seems like we know that the credibility of the accusers is less important than the political identity of the accused. Jason, what do you think this means for the Moore campaign? This basically, not endorsement necessarily, but President Trump basically saying, you got to vote for this guy, not Doug Jones.
Sure. I'll say this, on this week of Thanksgiving, if I'm on Team Moore, there's no question that there's one thing I'm thankful for. And it's Donald Trump, Donald Trump, Donald Trump. And I'll note I said his name fewer times than the president when he came out said that Moore has denied these allegations. When you take the president's comments, especially in combination with what Kellyanne Conway said the day before, I think the message from the president's pretty clear. And it's, I need Roy Moore in the United States Senate.
So for Jessica, I'm assuming that you would probably would take issue with that, but I do want to point out that Representative Clyburn, when he was talking about John Conyers and the allegations against him, he said, you can't jump to conclusions with these types of things. For all I know, all of this could be made up. What do you think?
I disagree with Representative Clyburn there, and I hope that there will be a thorough ethics investigation into this and to anybody who's been credibly accused of sexual assault. I mean, in John Conyers' case, this is one of the women is his scheduler, who, as we all know from having been around the Hill, is your right hand. The chances of that being made up, I think, are very minimal, just as everyone from Mick Mulvaney to Paul Ryan to Mitch McConnell has said that the Moore accusers appear to be credible as well. I think that the president did a very good thing for Roy Moore, and I assume it will help him on Election Day because it is a stand between conservatives and liberals. And this is something actually that the president faced himself in the 2016 election after the Access Hollywood tape. A lot of people kind of held their nose and voted for him because they wanted Neil Gorsuch, and they got Neil Gorsuch. And there are a lot more appointments to come. I know how difficult it would be to vote for someone on the other side, especially someone who is extreme. Someone today, actually, as you worked for Ted Cruz, put it to me, if Bill Clinton was on the ballot today and the other option was Ted Cruz, what happens? And I think a lot of Democrats would have a lot of trouble with that. So I take the point, but again, I don't think there's a place for an accused child molester in Congress.
There's the Detroit Free Press. We're going to stay on Conyers for a moment here, Jason. Basically, it is calling for Conyers' resignation, saying whatever Conyers' legacy will eventually be, his tenure as a member of Congress must end now. He should resign his position and allow the investigation into his behavior to unfold without the threat that it would render him and the people he now represents effectively voiceless. Your thoughts?
Sure. I read the editorial, and I'll say that it was very damning. And in addition to the proper condemnation of the sexual assault allegations, they very acutely pointed out that his cover-up, if you will, the fact that he paid hush money out of his office account was in and of itself a violation of House rules. And by the way, he's already fighting an ethics committee investigation for continuing to pay a former chief of staff after he had fired her.
Right.
Because can I have one more thing?
Yes, right. They fired her and then hired her back under a different account.
Yeah.
And taxpayers, Jessica, are saying, like, this is not going to stand. Do you think that this could be like one of the bipartisan things that gets done before the end of December is addressing this issue of how Congress pays out these settlements?
I think that it absolutely should be, and we know that they've paid $17 million out of this account on a range of issues. It's not all sexual assault, it's racial discrimination, religious discrimination, but if they are using our dollars, we should absolutely know where they're going, and I think, to your point, this can be bipartisan, and it can be something that can happen quickly for them to say, we have heard you, and we know that it's happening now in our house. This isn't just Harvey Weinstein or people out there in the world of media generally. This is happening on Capitol Hill. We want to protect the women who work in these offices and make sure that your dollars are going where you know that they're going.
All right. Well, Jessica and Jason, I wish you a very happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy
Jason,
Thanksgiving.
there's more breaking news in Texas you're going to want to go check out since you've been on the air with me. We'll see you after the Thanksgiving break.
Excited.
All right, Jessica Tarlov and Jason Johnson, thank you. Facebook alerting its users who may have clicked on Russian-paid content during the 2016 election. What the social media site is doing to protect its platform. Plus, the holiday travel headache. It's in full swing as millions make their way home. Adam Housley is live in Los Angeles. How's the traffic there, Adam?
Well, it's moving at least in one direction, but don't expect that to last long. Behind me here in L.A., it's sunny. Traffic going southbound seems to be okay, but around the country, it's not as glorious this time of the day. We'll give you the rundown of what you can expect when you hit the road. Coming up.
Facebook is trying to help users track whether they followed or liked pages with Russian propaganda during the 2016 election. The social media giant is creating what it calls the disclosure portal at its help link. About 140 million users on both Facebook and Instagram were affected. Facebook is saying this today: it is important that people understand how foreign actors tried to sow division and mistrust using Facebook before and after the 2016 U.S. election. That's why, as we have discovered information, we have continually come forward to share it publicly and have provided it to congressional investigators. So the mass migration for the Thanksgiving holiday has begun. If you're traveling by car, AAA estimating you'll be sharing the road with more than 50 million other people, despite a slight increase in gas prices compared to last year. Adam Housley is live in Los Angeles, where the notorious bottlenecks could soon get even worse. Adam, earlier you said that it was sunny there, which is actually kind of insulting to the rest of us who are looking at you in that beautiful weather. But what's the traffic like now?
Yeah, well, the biggest problem here in Los Angeles is going to be the people that put their top down as they drive for Thanksgiving dinner and get a sunburn, because the weather here is amazing. In fact, when you talk to AAA and other travel advisors, they'll tell you the number one problem with travel, usually over the holiday weekend, is weather. And right now, weather, at least here in Southern California, is fantastic. To my right, you give a quick look of Los Angeles. Right now, traffic is moving. We're going to show you some video in a little bit that where it wasn't moving so well, but they expect this to get worse and worse as the day goes on. We also have a live look for you at 4 different locations around the country. We have San Francisco and Denver airports up. You can see, obviously, busy day to fly around the country. Also New York and Chicago, where traffic is picking up as well. Atlanta expected to be the worst place to drive in the country on this day before Thanksgiving. And when you talk to travel advisors, they'll tell you while flying is tough and there are big lines, it's actually the roadways that are the worst.
Thanksgiving is primarily a driving holiday and not really a flying holiday. So there's a lot of attention paid to what's going on at the airport when, in fact, most of the congestion happens on roadways.
And Dana, actually, the whole Thanksgiving holiday is spread out now. It really runs from the Friday before to the Monday afterwards. So traffic any of those days can be poor. And of course, if you live in LA, it's poor every day of the year.
Indeed.
Back to you.
But is there anything that people can do to make it a little easier?
Well, if you're not driving, of course, having some adult beverages will help a little bit. If you are driving, of course, only water and soda. But take a look at last night, because this is something you're going to have to deal with, at least here in L.A. I was actually stuck in this traffic last night with my wife. I went over to her studio, decided to go to dinner afterwards with the kids, and it took us an hour to go like 8 miles, which clearly was not the smartest decision on our part. But it is going to be busy. The best thing to do is get there early and, of course, allow extra time. And if you talk to AAA, they'll tell you it is going to be a very busy few days.
It's the most amount of traffic we've seen in a dozen years. And as you're hitting the road, just pack your patience and be ready for lots of traffic.
And again, the good news, Dana, at least at this hour, we're by the 405 freeway here by Los Angeles International Airport, LAX. It's moving kind of slow northbound. It's been slow all day. Southbound's still going pretty good, but I got to believe in an hour or two, knowing Los Angeles like our crew does, that's not going to be moving either. So if you're going to be getting out of town, either go late or try to get out now. Back to you.
Well, Adam, I just want to say I've been very thankful for you helping us get this show launched. Appreciate you reporting for the Daily Briefing, and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Anytime, Danny. We appreciate it as well.
All right. Thanks, Adam. Millions of Americans on the move today, and Rick Reichmuth will have the forecast for you. Wherever you're spending your Thanksgiving holiday, you're going to want to see this. And new video shows the harrowing moments as a North Korean defector makes a daring dash for the border. We'll show you more of his dramatic escape. The North Korean soldier shot as he raced across the DMZ to defect to South Korea is conscious and recovering from his injuries. Doctors say the man's body was riddled with parasites when he made his escape. Meanwhile, dramatic new video just released shows that man's harrowing race to get across the border. Watch. Watch this Jeep. The driver is heading for a North Korean checkpoint. After breaking through a barrier, the Jeep reappears seconds later. That, of course, causes multiple armed North Korean soldiers to chase after him. Moments later, the defector gets stuck in a ditch just feet from the border. He gets out and makes a mad dash as the North Korean soldiers open fire just behind him. Look closely. One of the North Koreans actually crosses the white line marking the border between the two countries. That soldier takes a couple of steps into South Korea before retreating back to the northern side. A short time later, an infrared camera shows the badly wounded North Korean soldier lying behind a wall on the southern side. You then see South Korean soldiers crawl to the man and drag him to safety. Let's bring in Michael Waltz. He's a former Green Beret commander and a Fox News contributor. It's one thing to read about it. It's another thing to actually see that happen. I mean, what bravery for that North Korean soldier to try to defect and to hopefully regain all of his abilities after that horrible situation. And doctors say he is doing better, Michael.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have a pretty horrible situation in the country, period, in North Korea. They have over 1,000 per year that defect. Usually they sneak over the border with China and defect through China. Mm-hmm. This is the first one over the DMZ since 2007. But, wow.
What could
I'm glad he made it.
How tense is it there at the DMZ if the North Korean soldier that, that steps over into the South, could that trigger some sort of event?
Well, it could. The United States had a helicopter shot down that veered over the DMZ in the 90s. So, it is, everything there is on a hair trigger. It's the most heavily armed border in the world.
I wanted to ask you before we go into the holiday weekend, what are the other two things that you are really thinking about? I know North Korea is one. What's another?
Well, I'm definitely watching Syria. The president had a call with President Putin yesterday. Defeating ISIS, I think, was the relatively easy part militarily. Now it's how do we create some sort of lasting peace with the Obama administration essentially having turned its back over the last 6 years. Both Iran and Russia are in the driver's seat. They're gobbling up territory in the wake of ISIS, and we really have to be concerned from the Kurds to the Turks to Assad to Iran to Russia about that entire coalition turning in on itself, and the United States has to stay engaged there, both in Iraq and Syria. The other thing that I'm really watching, you reported earlier the Navy plane crash in the Pacific. It's the 5th this year. We already know about the ships that have collided. Look, Dana, we have 16 years now of wear and tear on our military, particularly our Navy and our Air Force in the air. These planes are falling out of the sky, both from a lack of maintenance and from a lack of training. And we have to ask ourselves, as tensions are so hot in Korea, can we handle that? Plus continuing the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and everything we have going around the world. And one more point, the 3 carriers that are off the coast right now, off the North Korean coast as a show of force, the Navy had to basically scrap the rest of its aviation fleet to be able to fully staff those carriers. And that should ring alarm bells everywhere. We have to support our military with its budget in Congress and stop the cuts and lift the caps.
I know the president's focused on that. He was tweeting this morning that the military is getting stronger, but obviously from what you've just said, we've got a lot more to do, and it should be bipartisan for sure.
That's right. Yeah, we have a lot of work to do to reset after the last 16 years and to keep going forward.
All right, Michael Waltz, happy Thanksgiving to you. Thanks for being here.
All right. Thanks, Dana.
All right, from sexual misconduct allegations rocking Capitol Hill to the prospects for passing tax reform, how the Republican and Democratic parties are faring. And how the highways are looking this travel day. Jeff Flock is in Chicago in bumper-to-bumper traffic. We'll see him next. You're looking at a bunch of balloons being blown up here in New York City as we are less than 24 hours from the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and Americans are hitting the roads, rails, and skies across the country so they can eat a ton of food with their friends and family. We have live Fox team coverage with Jeff Flock in Chicago, but we're going to start with Chief Meteorologist Rick Reichmuth. Rick.
Dana, I tell you what, some Thanksgivings, it's just horrible out on the roads and in the skies. Nothing this year. We have an amazing travel day today, all the way through the weekend, which is great news. Take a look at this. These are the airports. One little airport, it's Newark, has a little bit of a delay, but nothing that's causing problems. A little bit of wind here. You can see cold air funneling in across parts of the Northeast. It will be a chilly day for that parade tomorrow, certainly in the morning. But as far as precipitation goes, we're looking really good. Here's travel delays throughout the night. Not expecting to really see anything. Maybe a little bit in towards the Pacific Northwest. We will see a little bit of rain throughout the day tomorrow across central Florida, but take a look at that. The rest of the country looking great. Pacific Northwest, some rain showers coming in, as well as a little bit of snow. But I tell you what, we have a lot to be thankful for as far as weather goes.
We do, but so I've never had a weatherman here in the studio. I like having you here.
Isn't it?
No, this is good because people like to watch the weather. But so here's the thing. I didn't get to go to your great party launching the umbrella, and I'm not even going to need the umbrella this weekend.
That's true.
But you have one for us.
I brought you a gift.
Okay.
So I've made an umbrella. About 5 years ago, I was standing in front of a rack of umbrellas thinking, somebody just tell me what the good one is. There must be a good one. And then I thought, I bet I could tell people what the good one is. So 5 years later, a ton of work. I came out with a line of umbrellas. It's called Weatherman. I want people to understand that.
Very clever.
Very clever, unique. That it's a great umbrella. But I also thought if you're going to invest in a good umbrella, you oftentimes lose it or you don't bring it.
Right.
So there's an app that comes with it. You get alerts on days that it's going to rain, and if you don't remember where it is, you hit locate, and it will tell you the last time you were connected.
I love that. Well, that will be better than the $5 umbrellas I buy downstairs in the subway.
Yeah, like single-use umbrellas that you go through over and over again. So anyway, 6 amazing colors. The website is weathermanumbrella.com, weathermanumbrella.com. You can go and just buy it straight from there. We have free shipping, by the way, all the way through Monday, so for everyone, and it makes a great gift.
You're quite an entrepreneur. Are you allowed to open one inside, or is that bad luck?
So we've talked about this. I am sure the curse is broken because I have opened up thousands of umbrellas over the last few years in my apartment, and I feel really lucky. So,
well, I'm proud of you. This is a big endeavor, and also thank you. I mean, I'm excited to have it, and I'm going to make sure Jasper gets a look at it too.
Jasper will look great. I actually realize I need to get you the right color.
For Jasper, anything goes with him. He's fine. He's fine. Rick Reichmuth, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So the calm weather definitely comes as welcome news for travelers, especially in one of the nation's biggest cities with the worst traffic. Fox Business Network's Jeff Flock is in Chicago. He's live, and we're expected to see more travelers than we've seen in a decade. So you're out on the road, Jeff. Does it feel busier to you?
Well, a little bit, and fortunately, we don't need any of Rick's umbrellas today. He's not selling any in Chicago today. It's beautiful weather, but the traffic is tight. We stopped by here, O'Hare Airport here, which actually maybe you can see pretty much, it's kind of like a parking lot, I would say. But you're absolutely right about the numbers. They say more travelers this year than any year since 2005. 50.9 million, according to AAA. And what are they facing out there? Well, they're facing slightly higher gas prices than last year, although they've come down a little bit in the last week. We're looking at prices about 39 cents a gallon more this year than Thanksgiving last year. Airfares slightly lower than last year, in fact, significantly lower. I'd say about 23% down. And hotels cost a little bit more this year, about 14% more demand for it out there. If you want the cheapest gas, well, let's start with the most expensive gas in the country. If you're driving in California, that's about $3.20 a gallon. Oregon and the District of Columbia, also high gas prices. And if you want cheap gas, I would say drive south. Alabama, South Carolina, and Texas. As we keep our eyes on the road, we're looping around the loop here at O'Hare, where the traffic pretty tight. Dana.
You're doing pretty good there, Jeff. Thanks so much. I love South Carolina and Texas, so that's good advice. Appreciate it. So back to politics and a look at the state of both parties, Republican and Democrat, as we head to the Thanksgiving table where I bet some folks will talk about more than just turkey. Joining me now is Chris Stirewalt, Fox News politics editor and editor of Halftime Report. We're going to get to Thanksgiving in a moment, but let me start with the state of the parties. And I want to start with a clip from Hillary Clinton in an interview with Hugh Hewitt. Listen to this.
It is true that when you run to succeed a two-term president of your own party, you have a historical headwind blowing against you. It's not just this campaign can be set apart from everything that's ever happened in our politics. It is a challenge.
So she's still talking about what happened in the election, and that's true. If you think about John McCain, he had a lot of headwinds after 2 terms of George W. Bush.
Right. It's only happened basically one time in modern political history with George H.W. Bush in 1988, and then he got bounced out in 92. So she's not wrong about that. The only relevant question about Hillary Clinton is, why are you still out there? Why are you calling in to Hugh Hewitt's talk radio show?
We love Hugh Hewitt.
Okay, but I'm saying for Hillary Clinton, why are you
she's
putting yourself
that book.
through this? But they have a quadrillion dollars. They raked all the cream off of every pot in every cow barn in North America. They should be more than fine on that. She's out there because she's trying to spin an alternate series of events about the 2016 election. Right. Her point there is a good one. It's a quite right one. That indeed it is hard for a president of the same party to succeed a 2-term president. That's 100% true. That's valid. But the narrative that she's pushing harder than that is that she didn't run a lousy campaign. She ran a lousy campaign. It's okay. She did a bad job at running for president. She was unpopular. It was a mess. And you know what? Give yourself and the country a break and just move on with your life. Go to the happy chapters of your life. Don't keep relitigating this thing.
Right. There is something about graciously losing and moving on and then enjoying the life that God gave you, for sure. But so we know that the state of the Democrats is in disarray and they've got to figure their stuff out. But what about the Republicans? As they head into Thanksgiving, I mean, 82% of Republicans say they're firmly behind President Trump. They feel united. But is the party in as big a disarray as some people think it is?
Oh, yeah. This is a big bad time. They can't come to terms about for example, the fact that consensus has not formed around the question of whether Roy Moore is a suitable United States senator is a great reflection of how painful and damaging the self-inflicted wounds of the Republican Party are. You have Steve Bannon bucks the president, goes down to Alabama, gets behind this candidate who is now a toxic disaster for Republicans from coast to coast, and even then, the party cannot say, okay, for the good of the order, we're going to have to bounce this guy. He's no good. We should all turn our backs on him. And then they say, well, maybe we can have him because we want the seat. And it is totally predictable and totally reflective of what happens when you go to war with each other instead of focusing on your political rivals.
Well, and then you have up in Minnesota, you have Al Franken, who now I saw a poll this morning. He's at 22% approval, just plummeting support with more people calling on him to resign. What do you think will happen there?
I think the polling up there is a little sketchy, but I don't doubt that the news stories that have been out about Al Franken have made him unpopular in Minnesota.
Yeah.
And by the way, Democrats, daggone it, if they really want to be serious about this stuff, they better find a better way to address these questions than they have with Al Franken, and now we're starting to do with John Conyers.
Yep.
They better do a better job about this because their moral authority on this is reaching a vanishing point, and they're not going to be able to say ticky boo to Roy Moore or anybody else if they don't straighten up.
Ticky boo. You know, I love that. We're going to record our podcast after this so everyone can listen. I'm sure we'll talk about Thanksgiving. I teased at the top of the show that we will find out what your favorite side dish is. Are you going to reveal it to us?
Yeah, Brussels sprouts.
Really?
Yeah, well, and there's 2 ways you can do it. One is very simply hot roasted, and then when they're done, you obviously are doing it in pork fat, you're doing it in bacon, and you're going to mix it with the crispy bacon, and you're going to add maybe some blue cheese, some gorgonzola to it, or the other one is in the casserole with Parmesan.
Can I throw up this map real quick? Can you take a look? We have a map of all the side dishes in America. So like in the West, they're eating a lot of salad. There's mac and cheese in the Southeast, squash in the New England states. Anything? Does this tell you anything about the politics of the country?
It tells me this. Americans have great definitions of salad,
yes,
which can include things like marshmallows. So I'm going to be merciful
like fruit
towards
salad.
I'm going to be merciful towards the West and assume that the inclusion of salad does not refer necessarily always to leafy greens, but things that have marshmallows and mayonnaise in them.
All right. Well, Chris, do you know how to subscribe to our podcast?
I've never done it because I help you make it.
So, so it's Perino and Starwell. I'll tell you what. And let me tell you, first you go to foxnewspodcast.com. Okay? You can do that. Then you scroll down, because you probably hammer time above us, and eventually you'll find our logo and see there at the bottom of the screen. You click on the logo and it will give you a variety of options. You can download the podcast and you can see how easy that was and join us every week.
Oh, yeah, that sounds fun.
All right. Happy Thanksgiving to you, my friend.
You too, my friend.
All right. Chris Starwell, everybody. Survivors of the Las Vegas massacre filing new lawsuits. The companies they claim didn't do enough to protect them before the shots rang out. And what Lauren Bush Lauren is doing this holiday season to help feed the United States and the world.
I really wanted to create a way for people to very tangibly and very meaningfully engage with the issue of hunger and give back. And that's why Feed is around.
Lawyers for hundreds of Las Vegas massacre survivors are filing new lawsuits. The suits take on MGM Resorts International, the company owning the Mandalay Bay Hotel where the gunman opened fire. Live Nation, the festival organizer, the estate of Stephen Paddock, Contemporary Services Corp., and other businesses. Victims claiming the hotel and event organizers didn't do enough to protect them from the deadly shooting on October 1st. You'll remember that 58 people lost their lives that day and hundreds of others were wounded.
We're going to give the American people a huge tax cut for Christmas. Hopefully that will be a great, big, beautiful Christmas present.
President Trump making his Christmas wish there. Will it happen? Right now, lawmakers are on break for the holiday. They return to Capitol Hill after Thanksgiving. Once they get back, Republicans in the Senate will try to pass a tax bill, but 7 of their own could stop it from happening. You can see them here. Joining me now is Maryland Representative John Delaney. Thanks for being here, sir.
Thanks for having me.
So it felt to me at the beginning of the week that there was some significant momentum on the Republican side, and I think that polling shows that it's inching up in terms of approval as people start to dig in and think about what this tax reform package would mean for them. You voted against it. Why?
So 3 reasons. Firstly, it increases the deficit by $1.5 trillion, and there's been no independent analysis that shows that any of the economic growth that's promised out of the bill will actually happen. So kind of as a beginning matter, I think that's bad policy. Secondly, the bill doesn't really get at some of the issues we have in the economy right now. If you think about why our economy is not growing, it's because we haven't invested enough in infrastructure. We haven't done things to attract capital to regions of the country that have been left behind, and we haven't been able to make investments in human capital. This bill doesn't address any of those issues, which you could address in tax reform. What this bill does is it's premised on the notion that we need more liquidity in the economy, and all major markets are very liquid, they're very strong. There's no evidence that there's lack of capital in the economy. And then thirdly, it disproportionately favors wealthy Americans over middle-class Americans. So for all those 3 reasons, it grows the deficit, it doesn't grow the economy, it doesn't really get at the issues we have in the economy right now, and then it's tilted towards the wealthy. I think it's a bad bill.
Well, I know, so Republicans would obviously disagree. I have a question for you, though. For all the things that you were just ticking off, though, when it comes to the corporate tax rate, wouldn't you agree that to do those things that you would like to accomplish, that you have to lower that corporate tax rate to get liquidity back in and to get that job training and investment back in America?
No, I mean, look at, so let's start with infrastructure. Okay. I mean, I have a very large bipartisan proposal, 40 Democrats, 40 Republicans, that pairs tax reform with infrastructure. So wouldn't this be a better bill if instead of lowering the corporate tax rate to 20%, they lowered it to, say, 23 or 24%, and we were launching $1 trillion national infrastructure as part of this bill? Wouldn't that be a better proposal? Wouldn't it be better to have incentives like a proposal I have that's also bipartisan that says if Americans sell their appreciated investments, they can defer their capital gains if they invest the proceeds in areas of our country that have been left behind economically. That would produce more growth. So listen, clearly lowering the corporate tax rate is beneficial on the margin. It's better to do it by removing deductions, which they haven't done in this bill. But what you really have to do is use tax reform as an opportunity to not only simplify the code, make it more competitive, fix the international system, but also get at some of the lagging things we've done in our economy. And if you talk to most business leaders, they talk about human capital, they talk about lack of investment in infrastructure. Those are bigger problems in most of their minds than where the corporate tax rate is.
So the Republicans feel like, at least in the House, that they could probably get this done. Of course, the Senate is where they always run into a little bit of a roadblock. There's 7 Republican senators who are sort of on the fence right now. They're going to need a little bit of help to try to get to a yes vote. Do the Democrats have a strategy to try to get them to not vote for the bill?
Well, I think our strategy is just to keep promoting the truth. As you might have seen, there's been some recent analysis that's come out in the last few days that shows in like 5 or 6 or 7 years, more than 50% of middle-class Americans will actually get a tax increase under the Senate proposal. And that's because the Senate individual, tax
Well, they want to keep it
expire.
in that $1.5 trillion window so that they say, well, it'll be, of course, the tax cuts will continue, but I hear what you're saying.
But again, wouldn't it be better to not get rid of the estate tax, right, which affects a few thousand Americans?
I think you can make that argument for sure.
And leads to a dynastic form of wealth in this country. It wouldn't be better to not bring the corporate tax rate down quite as far, and wouldn't be better to focus more of those tax breaks on the middle class?
He doesn't want to budge on that. But I hear what you're saying, and we appreciate you coming on the show, and I hope you have a really happy Thanksgiving. Congressman John Delaney.
Thanksgiving.
All right, bye-bye. Some valuable pieces of history recovered when police tracked down 86 items belonging to one of the Beatles and products made to give back. Feed Projects CEO Lauren Bush Lauren tells me how her fashion brand is fighting hunger around the world.
It's amazing to see consumers really kind of want to wear their heart on their bag, on their sleeve. And do good and support a brand and carry a brand. It's kind of cool. It's the new chic.